I shot this video before I actually flew the whoop because I figured I would probably be too excited and put it on one of my little carbon frames before I got a chance to shoot the video. And so I'm talking to you from the future here. But let's take a look at this. This is the BetaFPV Pro Series 2S whoop. And it is an update to the previous X2, 75X2. This is the 75 millimeter. I think it's kind of regarded as becoming the standard, the 75 millimeter standard, because the 65 millimeter ones, they're great for brushed size, but when you go up to brushless, the larger 75 millimeter size with the larger 41 millimeter props just tend to perform a whole lot better. Now, this is the second iteration, and it is also cheaper as well. It is the same price as the trash can and the other whoops that are going to be coming out very soon, and it does have a lot of the same updates as all the other whoops as well. Namely, it has a single board in there. It does not have like the double board stack. However, the VTX is still separate from the camera itself. And overall, it performs really well. The board performs great. It does have an F4 chip on there, so you can run 8K. And I did do a video about the F1 chip on a 5-inch running at 1.33K, and it performed the same or better than my 5 inches that are running at 8K. However, like I've said long ago, I feel that the higher refresh rates are more important for these little things. So I did test this whoop on 1K, and then 1.33, and then 1.6, and then 2K, and 4K, and 8K, and I found some pretty significant differences. First of all, once you go below 2K on the, not loop time, like the refresh rate, the frequency refresh, it turns off dynamic filtering. It apparently can't do dynamic filtering under 2K, which is pretty interesting. And so I was having a whole bunch of noise in the quad at idle. Like it wasn't really all that flyable. It did work, and when the battery was low in particular, it worked better than anything else, but it wasn't as smooth as it could have been if it had dynamic filtering on. So once I reached 2K, it actually became very flyable. On 1.33K, it flew awful. It was just terrible. It was not controllable at all. It felt like I wasn't even in control. It felt like I was pushing the sticks with my feet. On 2K, it became flyable with the dynamic filtering. When I put it up to 4K, then it became good. It became pretty decent, and it felt like all my previous whoop quads. And then I put it up to 8K. Oh, actually, before I did that, I tested it on 8K, 4K. So 8K like loop time refresh or loop refresh, PID refresh rate, and then 4K gyro rate, because the F3 processors don't do 8K, 8K. They can do 8K, 4K, however. So I did test it on that, and I wasn't able to tell the difference between 4K, 4K and 8K, 4K. However, when I went up to 8K, 8K, then I could definitely, absolutely, 100%, without a doubt, tell a very significant improvement. And this is the benefit that the Tiny Hawk has had for a long time, and now we're getting these whoops that have F4 processors and can do 8K, 8K. So there's still debate among developers whether 32K, 16K, these things are even necessary. However, I can tell you that with our current state of firmware in a whoop size like this, it definitely makes a very significant difference, and I'm very happy to say that this is much better performance. Now, this is a 2S quad, and let's talk about some of the components. So the components are, let's start with the motors. The motors are 0802 motors, down from the 1103 motors that were previously used on the previous X75 2S whoop. I'm not sure why they went down to 0802. I did ask them, they haven't responded yet, but it seems to perform great. And these motors are very special because they have bearings in them as well. Also, the motors are 12,000 kV. That's a very interesting kV, because the trash can and other whoops are typically coming with 16,000 or higher kV. So I'm going to talk about that in the next video, the various kV and performances of the motors, but let's continue on. These motors are particularly good because they have bearings, and that is a really big advantage. It just flies so much smoother, performs so much nicer in the air. It doesn't feel like it's like raspy and you're really like grinding away at the motors. It really is a lot smoother in the air, and that's really nice. The all-up weight of this thing is like 38 grams, like it's barely 40 grams with the 2S. And so let's take a look at the batteries, or just talk about the batteries. It comes with 300 milliamp 2S batteries, and that's pretty much what all the other 2S whoops are coming with as well. It seems like somebody has recognized that having too much weight underneath the whoop is going to have an issue, which is very obvious. Something to note about the frame is that it does not fit. Well, let's just jump to the parts inside. So this is what it looks like now. This is what my whoop looks like now. There's not much left to it, but I do have some things to say about all these things. I took the parts and I put them on this thing. And I'll also tell you why the board is not in that little quad as well. So let's take a look at the frame first. So the frame itself is, I think it's one of the same previous frames. The battery carrier underneath, the battery carriage, it actually doesn't fit two of the larger 450 milliamp batteries. It barely fits a 450 milliamp to begin with, but it definitely doesn't fit two of them stacked on top of each other. So you can't expect to do like super long range with this thing or super long flight times because it doesn't fit those larger batteries. However, it does fit one, and with the lower kV motors, I would say I would struggle to fly this thing even indoors with just 1S because the motor kV is so low. It does fly and it does kind of blimp around nicely, but it's not the same. However, when you put 2S, particularly the 300 milliamp 2S batteries like this that it comes with, similar to this that it comes with, is a 250, it comes with 300s, then it becomes really, really controllable. And with these 300 milliamp, I don't think I have the 300 milliamp in my pocket. No, I don't have a 300 milliamp in my pocket. But with these smaller batteries, it weighs just 1 gram more than a 1S 450 milliamp, and it performs a lot better. This thing is really, really fast to the point that I don't know if it's really necessary for indoors. However, it does weigh very, very little. And an issue that I had with the previous version was that when you gave it gas, it had like this super crazy turbocharger effect. Once you hit like 70% throttle, it would go nuts, and anything below 70% was just not good. And it's probably because it just weighed too much. All of it was just too much. Thankfully, this is a lot lighter, and it performs really, really nicely. It still has that turbocharger effect when you hit 70% throttle, and it goes, when I first hovered and I just did a little throttle grip, it went straight into my ceiling. So it does have a crazy turbocharger effect up at the top, but it also has a good amount of power in the lower band. So you definitely have really good control, and I would say it's really nice to fly indoors. It really is. You don't need the top at all. In fact, I would recommend you cut the top 30% or 30 points off your throttle range off the top, and that's going to make it a really nice indoor flyer. And with the 2S, you actually don't get a whole lot more flight time. You get the same about 3 minutes flight time, 2.5, 3 minutes, maybe a little bit over 3 minutes, which is curious. Something I'll talk about again in another future video. But yeah, that's that. So let's talk about a couple of issues I have with this. So the frame is great. The frame is a resiny material. It's more flexible than most of the whoop frames, and that just means it's not going to break. It doesn't really flex in flight. It's not really an issue with performance at all. It's the Beta frame. Everybody knows the Beta frame. It's very durable. It's a very good frame. No worries there. It also comes with this top canopy, which I do have some very significant concerns about because I've had about a dozen of these things, and they crack so easily. It's almost comical that they still include a canopy like this for their frame. But I think they've also recognized that because they're now using a little camera holder underneath the canopy. And in fact, it comes with two of these little camera holders. One of them is 25 degrees tilt, and one of them is 35 degrees tilt, which is also rather curious, and I'll talk about that in a minute as well. So the board. So this is the board. You can see that it's really nicely laid out. This is something that BetaFPV does really well. The motor plugins are just right there on the corners. They're really clean, really nice. All the stuff is right here on top. The boot button, the bind button, it has nice holes for the motor wires to, not the motor wires, for the power lines to solder into. It comes with a nice wire. It's a good quality feeling wire. And you can see here, this is the VTX, and they've soldered it onto, all the points. And then the camera is plugged into that and plugged into the VTX. The VTX is 25 milliwatts. It is not a 200 milliwatt VTX like the trash can. However, it's up to you if you think that it's necessary to go to 200 milliwatts. I personally would like the 200 milliwatts, but then again, I won't be running 2S all the time. I'll talk about that in another video. And so I don't know. I haven't have a trash can yet, unfortunately, so I can't compare it to a trash can. But I don't know if it runs on 1S with the 200 milliwatts VTX. Maybe it automatically dumbs down to 25 milliwatt. I don't know. Okay, so let's talk about the various issues that I have with this. So first of all, the canopy. I told you about the canopy. It's not really that big of an issue. It's just kind of a personal preference issue. The angled camera mounts, they're super TPU-y and super rubbery, which is really nice. So even if you do break the canopy, it's not really an issue. However, the fact that this thing is so freaking powerful and it comes with only 25 and 35 degrees tilt is not enough. It's just not enough. Coupled with the fact that the camera it comes with does not have the same field of view as other whoop cameras. So you have a relatively narrow, most importantly, vertical field of view, and you only have a maximum of 35 degrees tilt, which it comes with the 35 degree one installed. And then they get thrown a 25 degree one there also. When you're flying around, the thing has so much power, you need like 45 degrees just to go. When something has so much power and it's so lightweight, you fly at a much steeper angle. So you really do need that camera angle, or you need to have a really wide field of view on the camera. In addition to that, the camera is not the best quality, and this is a big complaint that I had for both the Tiny Hawk as well as the previous BetaFPV. So the BetaFPV products are typically really good quality. I mean, they have bearings in the motors. They do a really nice job laying out their all-in-one PCB board, all their things, and they even take patience and use really nice wire for their antenna. They have all these little details under control. However, I don't know how nobody noticed that the camera is just awful. By my standards, it's awful. It's not a bad camera, it's totally usable, but it doesn't have the field of view that I want, and it also doesn't have the resolution of some of the other whoop cameras, and it also doesn't do a great job of handling difficult lighting situations. So I just for the camera alone, it's difficult for me to recommend. Other than that, I did transfer everything over onto this frame. However, one of my ESCs on the board just stopped working. It's probably just mine. It's really unfortunate. I really wanted to try the F4 with the AK on one of my little tiny things, but unfortunately it's gonna have to wait till the trash can gets here, because I'm gonna immediately swap that over onto one of my frames as well. And so, yeah, so what's the conclusion of this thing? They did markedly improve this product. It is a whole lot better than the previous product. It flies really, really well. It also comes with Betaflight 4.0 installed, and the stock tune or whatever tune it comes with on Betaflight 4.0 is actually really good for it, and it performs really well. However, they did not have dynamic filtering turned on when I got it, so I'd highly recommend you go in there and flip that. Oh, sorry, not dynamic filtering, air mode. They didn't have air mode flipped on when I got it, so that's pretty much the only thing you're gonna have to go in there and set, along with your arm and flip over crash switch, and then you're pretty much good to go. You just put in your rates and you're pretty much good to go. So that's big kudos there. They did really good job of making sure it's like super updated and has the best possible performing code on board. However, who is this thing for? So most of the people that still buy these whoop products are going to be beginners, and for the beginner, this is a great product. There's nothing wrong with it. It performs really, really well. Even on 1S, it's going to be great for the beginner, even especially with the 300 milliamp battery. If you only put just one 300 milliamp battery, it does perform fine. When you put the 450 milliamp battery, it gets a little sluggish because it does weigh like 2 grams more, but it does definitely get a little bit more sluggish. So with the 300 milliamp, you're going to get the same 2.5 minute flight time. It performs, again, really well for this product. However, just for the camera quality alone, I cannot recommend this product. On top of that, I personally prefer the Tiny Hawk because it just feels better in the air. It just feels like it flies better, probably because the battery is slung underneath as well as the props are pushing down, so the overall balance of the quad is better. But again, I don't have a trash can. I can't compare it against the trash can, and this build in general looked like it would be a better transition to one of my carbon frames because the trash can actually has 2 boards in there. The VTX is so big and beefy that they had to put a whole separate board on there when it's going to be a little bit complicated to transfer onto my carbon frames, which do have heaps of better performance. So, to conclude with this product, it is a good product. It flies great, performs great, comes with great options, great features. It's going to serve you well, especially if you're a beginner. If you're an experienced user, I would caution buying it just because the camera pretty much has to be swapped out. And yeah, that's pretty much the main point. I don't know why they continue to use this questionable camera that's just not as good as it could be. It's not bad, it's just not as good as it could be. All right, and now let's talk about this thing in the next video.